Is your AI built to work with your business's data? IBM helps you integrate and govern unstructured data wherever it lives, so your business can have more accurate AI instead of just more of it. Get your data ready for AI at IBM.com. The AI built for business. IBM.
It's your man, Nick Cannon. I'm here to bring you my new podcast, Nick Cannon at Night. Every week, I'm bringing out some of my celebrity friends and the best experts in the business to answer your most intimate relationship questions. So don't be shy. Join the conversation and head over to YouTube to watch Nick Cannon at Night or subscribe on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts.
The amazing Kate Casey.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. Today's podcast is about a true crime case, and I wanted to forewarn you that we discuss elements of abuse. This episode is about stalking. Stalking is not just an invasion of privacy. It's a slow, relentless erosion of safety. It's the text that appears when you've blocked every number, the shadow that lingers at the edge of your vision, the hum of paranoia that keeps you from sleeping, walking alone, or answering the door. For victims, it's not a story that happens in a single moment, but a nightmare that stretches for months or years, blurring the line between public and private life. It's not a romance. It's not miscommunication. It's control, obsession, and in many cases, the prelude to violence. In 2011, Samantha Stites was a bright, outgoing college freshman, full of dreams and energy, when she met Christopher Thomas. At first, it seemed like a simple friendship. She tried to include him, to be kind, but over time, that kindness became the seed of something dark. Over the next 11 years, Christopher's obsession with Samantha would grow in ways that were relentless, terrifying, and life-altering. He followed her everywhere: restaurants, grocery stores, sporting events. Even her internships in another state couldn't stop him. He was always there, sometimes hidden, sometimes brazen, until Samantha's life, once predictable and safe, became a constant exercise in vigilance and fear. She did what she could. She reported his behavior. She filed for protection. She tried to live her life, but the danger never fully disappeared. And then, on a crisp morning in early fall of 2022, that danger turned into something no one could have imagined. Christopher Thomas broke into Samantha's home, kidnapped her, and even brought her dog along, and transported her to a soundproof bunker that he had built inside a storage unit near his Michigan home. Cut off from the world, completely alone, Samantha faced a nightmare that most of us couldn't even imagine. But she survived. And the way she survived is a story of courage, resilience, and mental strength. Over 3 episodes, Samantha shares her story publicly for the first time. She takes us through more than a decade of fear, resistance, and the sheer will to survive. And you will hear from her friends, the investigators who helped bring her stalker to justice. And you'll see never before seen released footage of police interviews, surveillance footage, and disturbing images recovered from Thomas's devices. It's not an easy story to hear, but it's an important one because understanding Samantha's full journey shows us the real impact of obsession and the incredible strength it takes to reclaim your life. Stalking Samantha, 13 Years of Terror is produced by Bigger Bang for ABC News Studios, and it airs on Hulu. And today, I'm going to start from the beginning, the first meeting that changed everything, the slow creep of obsession, the moments Samantha didn't know were dangerous, and warnings she tried to act on. And as you listen to my interview with Samantha, I want you to remember this. This isn't just a story about crime, it's about survival. It's about resilience, and about how one person can endure years of fear and still emerge with the power to tell their story on their own terms. Here is my interview with Samantha.
Thanks for having me.
So this story really begins with a gesture of kindness. You meet this young man who seems to be somewhat awkward. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How you meet him and how that pivoted into something much more sinister?
Yeah, I think even somewhat awkward is probably an understatement. It was a college sort of setting. He was interested in the same sort of Christian group I was in. And he was pretty socially awkward. I discover he lives at the same apartment complex off campus that I do. And I can tell he's like standing alone, not really talking to anybody. And so I just make small talk with him. And kind of from there, he sort of latches on to me. He friends me on Facebook, which isn't weird in that era of like 2011, 2012. That was, how a lot of college kids kind of communicated and, put themselves out there. And he, messaged me soon. It was kind of asking me if I was free or wanted to do things. I kept denying or excuses or real things I was doing. And then he started showing up with flowers at my doorstep. Well, he left flowers on my car, on my doorstep, never signed. He was never present. And I was kind of like, who's doing this? Is this somebody who's like interested in me? How do they know where I live and where I work? It's kind of weird. And eventually he owns up that it's him who has done these things. And so I like formally shoot him down and say, I don't have any interest in you. I'm sorry. Like, if anything, we could be friends, but I, back off. I'm not into it kind of thing.
So were there other people that kind of began to notice behaviors that said to you, this is something that you should pay attention to?
Yeah. And really this whole span, of contact went on for 2-3 years at college. So it was very subtle things kind of sprinkled in, even before some of the, roses and flowers. And one of my roommates at the time, he had left flowers and a note at our door and not signed or anything. And I told her, I was like, oh, I got flowers. Someone left flowers under my windshield wiper at my school internship, which not most of my friends didn't even know where that was located. And, I wasn't able to figure out who the person was for a while. And she's like, I'm actually concerned because you don't know like who this person is. And they clearly know where you live and where you work. Like, she was the first one to be kind of like, this isn't okay. And I kind of brushed it off as like, well, I don't know, maybe it's somebody like who I have interest in. And like, maybe it's really not that weird. Maybe it's got to be somebody I know. She was kind of the first person who was like, this could potentially be creepy and not cool. And when I found out who it was that actually did it, it was definitely highly trending toward the creepy side of things. It was not someone I was interested in. It was somebody I already made perfectly clear I, didn't have any romantic interest in.
And you point out in the series that you would be playing on a field and kind of look up and he would be in the stands. What was the point at which you started to feel those feelings of uncertainty and fear kind of creep into you?
Definitely that last semester before I graduated, that spring, I kind of separated myself from that Christian organization, like campus group. I was playing ultimate frisbee on a women's club team. And when we would practice, I would see him kind of up in the stands. It was like an indoor field house. So there were other people like exercising a little bit around, but I would like see him there. And it's not like there were other people like watching our practices or anything. That, and I just started seeing him. One day I was heading to one of my classes and I saw him. I passed him in the hallway and I obviously was kind of like, and then the next week, the same thing happened. And I was like, well, why am I just seeing him now? It's partway through. Even if he was passing this direction to go to a class, I would have seen him already. And I started seeing him every week. So really at that time, that last semester of college, I was like, this is starting to seem weird, but I was also like so busy and like a month from graduating. So I was like, once I graduate and leave, he's still going to be in school or doing other things. Like, I'm off to go out into the real world and live my life. So this problem will be left behind once I graduate and move.
But then it didn't.
It didn't. Yeah, so he showed up like to my hometown, like 2 hours away, really small town, one stoplight sort of situation. I graduated with a class of like 98 people, small town. And I'm like driving around with my boss and we I see in the rearview mirror him on his motorcycle. And so I like stop and talk to him, and he's like, says he gets accepted to the same internship out of state that I was accepted to. And if he could get a ride from me to go there. At this point, he was blocked on everything. I thought this problem would be in the rearview mirror once I got out of that campus environment. And now he's like trying to be close to me still. And so it was really then where I was like, okay, this is more than just a campus issue. This isn't something I can just shrug off. I've made very clear to him several times I want to be left alone. I've yelled at him in public at this point. I've had other people get involved, other like male mentors, other adults. Nothing's really working. He's not getting the picture. So at this point, my boss / family friend, we talk about it more, and he convinces me I need to file for a personal protection order. And we do, and it's granted for 6 years.
And in the process, you said that he's starting to transform physically too. So it's not only this mental fear, but now do you feel like more of a physical fear because he's transformed the way he looks?
I wouldn't say that happened until like 2020. So this was back in 2014 when I got the first PPO, right after I graduated college. I move states, I do this internship, I do grad school, I have this whole other life. And to me, it seems like he's totally out of the picture. He does come to Kansas City at one point while I have a PPO and try to talk with me. And that was the only time I ever saw him. When I moved back to Northern Michigan in 2020, I see him. I'm at this like adult soccer league, like recreational sort of league. And I see him, but he's thinned out at this point in 2020. And I don't really think much of it. I don't think much of it in terms of him being thinner other than like, oh, he's been working out or something but I'm terrified because I'm like, why is he in this same city I'm in all this time later? He wasn't somebody who grew up playing soccer. Why is he here all of a sudden? He doesn't try to talk to me. He doesn't really acknowledge me even, or like wave or anything you might with a former acquaintance, even though we had a PPO. I mean, obviously not good terms, but he never makes any attempt to get a hold of me. But I start seeing him a lot of places. And at this point, I was 28, 29. And I start seeing him at the gym I go to. I start seeing him at the grocery store. I start seeing him more and more places, and it just doesn't feel like a coincidence. And I think maybe at that point, I start to feel like, I know how fast he is because I've seen him play soccer. He's obviously like a man. I'm a petite woman. Like he's going to be stronger than me. But he never like tries to get in touch with me or contact me. So I really don't understand why I'm seeing him. Like if he were interested, if he were still maybe into me or something or not over it, I would think he'd try to get in touch with me or approach me or something. And he just doesn't.
Would you be comfortable just walking me through the day that you were taken?
Yeah. So I guess the day, I don't know that I need to get into the previous PPO. I had filed for a PPO when all of this had happened. And they were like, we'll consider it if you would both attend a hearing. And I was terrified of that. So the day, this was like October 7th. October 7th. For some reason, I was like, is it the 6th or the 7th? 2022, I was living in my own house, asleep in bed at 7 a.m. My roommate worked at a hospital, so she got up early and left for work a few minutes before. I'm a very light sleeper to begin with, but I kind of hear a floorboard creak and I sort of see a shadow through my cracked bedroom door. And I strongly think there's somebody outside my bedroom door. And I wasn't sure if my roommate had left yet or anything. And so I kind of call her name and I don't hear anything. And I'm pretty positive there's somebody outside my door, though. And I'm like, well, if they're robbing me, why would they be waiting outside my door? They must be here for me. And so I decide, I'm either going to turn on the light and figure out what's going on, or I'm going to get this hatchet I keep under my bed to try to defend myself. And I choose to reach for the light, and this person bursts into my room and jumps on top of me and starts choking me, and I'm screaming. And I recognize immediately that it's this person who had been stalking me all those years ago that I keep seeing everywhere. And I just immediately think, I've seen enough true crime. I've seen enough. I know this is not going to be good. He wants to kill me, or he wants to rape me, or both. And I just feel like I'm in this impossible situation. And he binds my hands and feet. He puts this ball gag in my mouth and keeps my whole head. And he carries me out of my house, and he takes me to this like soundproof 7x7 sort of bunker he's built in this storage unit relatively close to my house. And there's like metal rings on the wall. He chains me to the wall, and he says he wants to talk. I'm like, I kind of think like, bullshit. Like, you've had all these opportunities. If you want to talk to somebody, you don't kidnap them and chain them to a wall. And he reveals to me he wants to keep me here in this room for 2 weeks. And I kind of get the gist that he is still in love with me, that this is a very sick person. And I think, what's he going to do after 2 weeks? Like, clearly he's going to get in major trouble for this. The only way out for him is to kill me. So obviously my mind is racing. What do I do? And knowing a bit about him, I'm a trained social worker, like therapist. I realized like the only way out of this situation is essentially to get him to let me go. Use my mind to get out of this situation. So through the course of this day, from like 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., I'm talking with him. I'm trying to spin it for him to think this isn't a big deal. Like, you can let me go. Nobody's going to know I'm gone. Like, I realize he's afraid of going to prison. And I kind of plant this seed of like, we can be friends. What if this isn't a big deal? And all this time we've had so many miscommunications. Like, what if we could just be friends? Because that's ultimately what he wants, is to be close to me. And so I kind of feel like this is my only way out of this situation, is to get him to let me go safely. And once people realize I'm gone after a day, I wouldn't just disappear. People are going to be looking at him, looking for him and me. And it's going to be a way more tense situation. So ultimately, I convince him to let me go, but his stipulation essentially is to have sex with me. So he doesn't really get this concept of consent. And I explain, I am seeing somebody. I'm not interested in you. I don't want to do this. And essentially that's my only way out of this situation, is to hold up my end of the bargain and hope that he will hold up his and let me go. And that's what happens. And it's a miserable endeavor. And he lets me go, takes me to my car. And I realized through this whole day in this conversation, he's got trackers on my car. Any horrible thing I had thought crossed my mind. It was all that and more. And so I have to be very careful. How do I get to the hospital? How do I get to the police? This is a wild story. Who's going to believe me? And I get a friend to come pick me up and take me to the hospital and do a SANE exam, like a rape kit, and talk to the police, and it starts this whole process.
Price tracking by Expedia. You were made to use your Do Not Disturb mode. We were made to track flight prices to out of office. Expedia, made to travel. Available as a member benefit.
How hard is it to kill a planet? Maybe all it takes is a little drilling, some mining, and a whole lot of carbon pumped into the atmosphere. When you see what's left, it starts to look like a crime scene.
Are we really safe? Is our water safe? You destroyed our town.
And crimes like that, they don't just happen.
We call things accidents. There is no accident. This was 100% preventable.
They're the result of choices by people. Ruthless oil tycoons, corrupt politicians, even organized crime. These are the stories we need to be telling about our changing planet. Stories of scams, murders, and cover-ups that are about us and the things we're doing to either protect the Earth or destroy it. Follow Lawless Planet on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to new episodes of Lawless Planet early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
You mentioned, obviously, your background as a social worker. Do you think that there were other life experiences or skills that you leaned on in those moments? Because it's so profound how wise you were in that moment to sort of disconnect yourself and to see him almost like a patient. And that seems to have had such a big part in your ability to outthink him.
Yeah, obviously my educational expertise, I was able to kind of sort of twist in a way to understand people's motivations and how to get them from, say you're working with a patient who wants to quit smoking or has a goal in mind. What's their motivation? How do you kind of get them from point A to point B on their journey? Kind of twisting that into how do I use this thing with him of like, how do I convince him that he doesn't have to go to prison and that he can get what he wants out of this situation while also getting what I want, and for us to both be safe, even though knowing that's not realistically how it's going to go. I think obviously my training, I've always been somebody just as a person that is very quick on their feet, is very like calm in like life-threatening situations. I don't know. I grew up in an environment that was somewhat neglectful. There were, alcoholics around. There were people that weren't always great people around. I became a quick judge of character, I would say, early on as a child. Was put in some situations, I think, that I learned how to look out for myself early on. And so I think a lot of that kind of helped through it all. But I think a lot of it too is just luck. You don't know how in a traumatic situation, if you're going to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I think a lot of it came down to luck and ultimately somebody's will to survive. And I think that was strongly the only option I had to survive that situation. Most likely was the path I took. So, I'd like to think maybe there's something different about me, but at its core, I think anyone has that ability as a human to understand what it takes to survive a situation.
Is there also a part of it where, in part of compartmentalizing, you realize the fragility of the mind? And in his situation, are you also thinking about what is his makeup, his psychological makeup? And did you have any information about that just in the, in the beginning period of time where you're quote unquote like friendly and in this group together that you used to your advantage when you were in that moment?
Honestly, I think when he attacked me, I felt like, okay, at least I know who this person is and I kind of know a bit about them.
Okay.
Sort of what makes him tick. It's not this random stranger I don't know anything about. I know I know a little bit about his family. I know kind of what his tendencies are. I know that he can lose his temper. I know that he's ultimately a soft and misunderstood sort of person and longs to be understood. So like, how do I use those to my advantage? And that was a lot of what went into me being very like calm and caring and not freaking out about this situation, to kind of use that to really flip the script on what he thinks is happening through that captivity period.
Now, I know there are people listening now and they're thinking of themselves in your shoes and they're imagining just like you going to meet your friend, going to the hospital, going through that period. What is happening on the other end with him?
Essentially, so we kind of make this agreement, he eventually holds up his end of the bargain and releases me. And I say, I'm going to go home. I have this tape. I have Gorilla Tape stuck in my hair. I have, marks on my wrists. I'm dirty. I haven't eaten. All of this stuff. So I'm like, I need to go home. I need to clean up. I need to, if this is how things are going to go, I need to get myself together so that my roommate doesn't come home and be like, you're acting weird. What's going on? I tell him this is what I need to do. So essentially he believes that. And in that, he had been awake since 3 a.m. before he kidnapped me. So he's exhausted. He goes home and goes to sleep, I think. He believes this, story that I'm going to go home, get cleaned up, and I'm going to get, he unblocked his number on my phone while he had me in the bunker and had me send a text or something like that. And I was like, I will get in touch with you at the end of the weekend. And if you want, we can make plans, maybe go for a walk or something. But I made it clear, if you're insisting that we have sex for all of this situation, this is not going to be something that, I don't just have sex with friends. I'm like, this is not a normal situation. So essentially he goes home and goes to sleep and Lord knows, has a normal evening next day. I don't know. And I go to the hospital. I'm terrified he's changed his mind and is following me or is going to go after friends or family, or I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of people are like, well, is he caught? They're like, how could this is a monster.
Mm-hmm. So I speak while I'm in the hospital. I mean, it was 3 a.m. finally when the police came and took my testimony. And kind of after that point, they started searching for him. They got warrants for, phone pings for the storage unit he kept me in. And they found him the next day, essentially at home. He was about to get in his car and go get some food from somewhere or something. And they essentially pulled him over. And because he was a, high risk for potentially ending up in a shootout with police, they had a SWAT team come. They arrested him. They interviewed him. He made up this wild story that we had been engaged in a sexual relationship and that this was role play gone wrong, which I laughed at when I heard. And the court denies him any bond. He's held basically until he's not let out of jail until this issue is resolved, which the plea deal was on the table. We went to court. There was sentencing February 2024. And he is serving 40 to 60 years in prison for all of his crimes.
Now, in the aftermath, what does the situation look like in his property? And what are the lengths through which authorities then realized he had been following you?
I learned a lot while I was in the bunker with him that day. He was very transparent about how he was tracking me, my primary vehicle, my truck, my closest friends' vehicles, taking photos of me. I wasn't quite sure to the extent of that. When police searched his home, they found, all the schematics for the bunker he built himself. This bucket at his home that they lifted the lid and it was just full of foul smelling sex toys. And he had revealed to me he masturbates 12 times a day. They found, obviously different sexual paraphernalia there, weapons, crossbows, rifles. There was a book that I can't remember the full title. It was kind of like how to stay cool in really tense situations or something. Just all of this leading to the fact that he had been planning this kidnapping for months. And so it really, the police's job, I think, was pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that he was pretty transparent. What did he say to you about the reason that he had fixated on you?
He said he was particularly attracted to me because I'm like a strong, independent person.
Which is interesting because you would think the archetype is that someone like that would want to choose a woman who was meek and smaller and would be easy to control. But you were actually the opposite.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes unique. I guess if you're wanting to target somebody and hold them captive, you'd think you would pick somebody who's maybe a better target, potentially less resourceful. I'm a big outdoorsy survivalist sort of person. I like to, or at least I used to like to backpack out in the wilderness alone with my dog. I'm good in tense situations. I'm intelligent. It does seem kind of counterintuitive, but I guess you fall for who you fall for.
Well, you had filed protection orders and sought help from the legal system over the years. What was your experience with the courts and with law enforcement? And what could they have done differently?
The first PPO, was a very relatively easy situation, filling out paperwork. Judge read it in a timely manner, said, this is textbook stalking, granted the longest PPO he had ever granted in his pretty long career. When I moved back and filed in 2020, I had the assistance of an assistant prosecutor from that county who also played on my soccer team. We included the previous information from the previous PPO, had a bunch of statements. I felt it was difficult because he wasn't actively getting in touch. He wasn't approaching me. He wasn't, texting me, sending me letters, things like that, like you think with folks that are stalking people. So other than documenting all the times he was showing up at the same places I was, I didn't have a lot of new information to go on. But I filed, and the following week I got a letter in the mail saying their relationship seemed complicated and the ex parte order was denied, which essentially means if you want a PPO, you can attend a hearing with yourself and the person you have the complaint about, and the judge will hear the case and decide whether a PPO should be granted. I was way beyond that. I was terrified that if I showed up in that situation, that I've poked this bear who's potentially violent, and if they don't grant it, even if they do, a piece of paper isn't going to stop him from hurting me. Mm-hmm. So I made the decision to not pursue that hearing, to try to stay kind of under the radar and essentially get more evidence to file again. I never had that opportunity because he kidnapped me. The court had said, there wasn't sufficient evidence that I was in immediate danger or harm and that our relationship seemed complicated. In Grand Traverse County, the judges also have referees that are, to my knowledge, not elected officials, that when PPOs are submitted, they're reviewed by a referee, and the referee makes kind of an initial determination that then gets passed along to the judge, and the judge has to make a determination. I do not think, in my case, that this was the process as I detailed it. I don't think the judge in Antrim County who granted my first PPO said, I read everything you submitted in the second. And I think, understand how it wouldn't have been granted. So someone in that system failed to do their job. I understand maybe not granting a PPO in a situation where you're co-parenting or you're sharing a workplace or live in the same apartment complex, because with personal protection orders, there's distance regulations. So, somebody can be arrested if they're within however many feet of you. In this situation, none of those were the case. So if he wasn't actually stalking me, I didn't see what the downside was to having that in place, because it gave me at least the feeling of more protection. And then if he does violate it, then there's something to actually charge him with. So to me, it seemed like, what do I have to do to prove this? What is the downside if somebody's not actually stalking me and there's a PPO against somebody? It's not like it's a legal charge on somebody. It doesn't stay on someone's record. To me, it seemed silly. Why would you not grant something? Why would somebody go through all that work when somebody has a past of this happening that's documented and not? To me, somebody didn't do their job.
It's your man, Nick Cannon, and I'm here to bring you my new podcast, Nick Cannon at Night. I've heard y'all been needing some advice in the love department. So who better to help than yours truly? Nah, I'm serious. Every week, I'm bringing out some of my celebrity friends and the best experts in the business to answer your most intimate relationship questions. Having problems with your man? We got you. Catching feelings for your sneaky link? Let's make sure it's the real deal first. Ready to bring toys into the bedroom? Let's talk about it. Consider this a non-judgment zone to ask your questions when it comes to sex and modern dating in relationships, friendships, situationships, and everything in between. It's gonna be sexy, freaky, messy, and you know what? You'll just have to watch the show. So don't be shy. Join the conversation and head over to YouTube to watch Nick Cannon at Night, or subscribe on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. Want to watch episodes early and ad-free? Join Wondery Plus right now.
How can the system work better that holes like that don't happen?
I think mandating, which Grand Traverse County has said that they have since changed the rules regarding this, that if somebody files a PPO, the referee does have to look up that information and make it available, even if the person doesn't provide it in their file when they submit a PPO. So I think that in itself is a win. I think, ultimately, doing their job, essentially, like reading somebody's statement and giving someone the benefit of the doubt. Certainly in situations where somebody has another overlapping contact is a different case. But in this situation where it's an acquaintance, there's a previous, to me, it seems like a no-brainer. I think there's a lot that the court could do to make that process easier for victims. I'm a master's level social worker, and I had the assistance of an assistant prosecutor, and I still had my PPO denied. And I think it's very reasonable that anyone in that situation would not want to attend a hearing with their stalker.
Without question. Yeah.
So I think that process too could be changed, because if somebody's truly dangerous, no person, male or female, in their right mind is going to want to show up, plead their case to a judge for a personal protection order where somebody's still out in the public, is never put under arrest.
Well, it's also kind of setting a tone, like, we don't believe you. We don't believe you so much that we're going to put you in the same room with the person that you are telling us that you're terrified of.
Absolutely.
I think about this case and how these kind of cases may be getting worse because so many women are online and really kind of laying out their day, their schedule, details of their life. What is your advice for someone who is going through a similar situation, and how can women better protect themselves? Because it really sounds like it's such a battle when you identify that someone is stalking you.
Yeah, it's really hard to stay anonymous these days, whether or not you have social media or ever post your location. Like if you purchase property, essentially you can kind of be looked up your location. There's a lot you have to do to kind of keep things private. I think in terms of just general safety, like keeping locations private, not ever publishing contact information, like kind of basic things. At the same time, there's nothing I feel like that's going to stop somebody who has that intent, other than documenting and going to police and trying to get, proper streams involved. Get others, switch up your routines. Don't let people know exactly where you're going at any particular time. I was especially since 2020, I was very aware, like, I'm not going to always go the same route, arrive at the same time here or there, switch up my routines. It's sad that that's something you have to think about. But I think as somebody who has concerned that who's concerned they're being stalked, all of those things are very important.
How can friends and family support someone that believes that they're being stalked or harassed? How can we be a better community and be of more support to someone in a similar situation?
Good question. I think a lot of folks, myself included, that are being stalked kind of have a hard time coming to terms with that. Not always, but kind of towing that line as a friend or family member of having those serious conversations and not like pressuring the person into doing anything, but getting some resources. Let's document what's actually happening so we can see on paper, and you can also see for yourself as a victim how many times this person is contacting you. Is this something that is normal? Encouraging the person to have safety measures in place, whether that's home security systems, cameras, locks, trying to not go places alone where that person may know where you are, those kinds of things. Obviously offering support, and putting as much power into that victim's hands to, do things for themselves, because ultimately, like, friends and family can assist, and put resources in somebody's hands, but it's got to be the victim ultimately who is making a lot of that happen, which is hard. So providing support around those things. Can I go to the police and make a report with you? Can we look for a therapist? Can I help you find a documentation log and help you organize this information so it's easier to submit for a PPO? Any of those types of things.
Like you said, I'm so grateful for your openness. And I can only imagine how painful it is to revisit this so often. But I really feel like you're really changing the way that people look at unchecked obsession and the importance of supporting victims of stalking and of violence. Do you feel like you've gained some of your power back in your advocacy?
Yes. And I will say one more comment before I get to the advocacy piece too. And it's not just supporting victims. There's, stalkers don't usually live in complete isolation. There's usually somebody who's aware of someone's likes or intentions towards somebody. They might not know that full extent, but if you know somebody who's also obsessed with somebody and is not getting over it, helping support that person to get help. Had this person gotten help a decade ago, this maybe would have never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no mental health treatment. He never saw a therapist. He never, there were people that were concerned with his element of obsession with me and with a previous victim, that, there's people in the perpetrator's life too that can kind of set off warning signals too. So it's kind of on both sides. But I would say in terms of what was your question specifically with advocacy? I definitely feel like through telling my story, through, even just doing more research about stalking and sexual assault, being vulnerable and putting my story out there helps people to look differently, even at somebody that, I think most women, most people probably can relate to. This person keeps asking me to hang out or ask me on dates and just isn't getting the picture. I've had people message me of like, oh, that's happened to me recently. And based on what I've heard about your story, I straight out from the get-go was like, please don't contact me. I'm not interested in you, more direct communication. So something as simple as that, I think, in terms of advocacy, I think it's making a change just in people's lives. But in terms of like my own healing and all of that too, I mean, a lot of it is helpful for me in terms of processing things, but also giving greater purpose into this awful thing that's happened to me to help other people. There were a lot of like things that I had gleaned from listening to podcasts, from watching survivor stories or reading books that were very impactful for me, that helped me in the moment navigate that really difficult situation of being held in this bunker. The more you know and the more prepared you are, I think helps. And that's a lot of the reason why I'm sharing my story.
Well, will you tell everybody about your new website? Yeah,
so we launched a website called beekeepersadvocacy.org, beekeepers, plural, advocacy.org. And we're hoping to provide some resources that are already existing for folks that are maybe being stalked, providing different opportunities. As a master's level social worker, I'm hoping to create like a continuing education course for other social workers or professionals to be more aware of stalking and how to help for the people that are like boots on the ground working with victims potentially or perpetrators even, and also different speaking engagements and things like that, opportunities.
I'm really, really impressed, and I'm so grateful for the work that you do. And I'm certain that there are so many people that are going to listen to this story and be so uplifted by your story. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. I appreciate it.
The amazing Kate Casey.
I want to thank my great guest, Samantha, and remind everyone to make sure that they subscribe to the podcast. Please leave a 5-star review. Join the Facebook group Reality Life with Kate Casey. You can get my list of what to watch in unscripted TV every week by going to katecasey.substack.com, and make sure that you get the bonus podcast episodes on Apple Podcast and Patreon at patreon.com/Kate Casey. And also follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at @KatecaseyCA, TikTok, it's Kate Casey, and Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky at Kate Casey.
Wherever you go, whatever they get into, from chill time to everyday adventures, protect your dog from parasites with Credelio Quattro. For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, visit CredeliaQuattroLabel.com. Consult your vet or call 1-888-545-5973. Ask your vet for Credelio Quattro and visit QuattroDog.com.